What's going on, Fantasizers? This is Nate here, welcoming you to another segment from Fantasizing, where we talk all things fantasy football. You may also know me as Yoo-Hoo. I just cracked open actually a Blind Pirate from Monday Night Brewing, Blood Orange IPA, and I'd love to hear what you guys are drinking. But let's talk some football. Today comes part 2 of a series I'm doing with Cody, taking a look at the last 4 guys on our list of players that were hurt by the NFL draft. Before we get started though, I've been held against my will by our editor at large, and I'll have to plug the channel. Jokes aside though, we just want you to be up to date on all we're doing here, so be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. If this is something you're really into, check us out on Patreon using the link in the description. All right, let's get started. Continuing where Cody left off, we had a plethora of RB hopefuls take hits as a result of the draft, including Damian Williams, Marlon Mack, and Ronald Jones. I'm going to start by adding Devin Singletary to this list. Ironically, he was my sleeper heading into the draft. You could say I was prepared for Terry's. I fully expected him to bounce boogie and bump his way into RB15 territory. In fact, I had planned on listing him in my last video on running backs bound to improve next season. He had Frank Gore out of his way and had a solid rookie outing running the ball. At only 151 attempts, Singletary ran the ball for 775 yards at 5.1 yards per carry. Now he was limited because of a load share as well as split rushing TDs with Gore and Allen, but he showed promise in his ability to run and catch the ball. And that's something that Josh Allen really liked to do, dink and dunk to his backs. And Singletary was clearly the best option for that. All that in mind, I was taking him in rounds 3 and 4. And would have been more than happy with him as my RB2. But that excitement came to a screeching halt upon the Bills' drafting of Zach Moss. Moss was drafted in round 3, same as Singletary. Moss has a prospect grade of 6.3, higher than Singletary's, suggesting he'll be a starter within the first 2 years. The combine shows Moss is even bigger, faster, and stronger than Singletary was at that point. Of course, Moss will need to add the dad strength that comes from playing in the league, but I think he's here to stay, sharing the load like Gore did last year. I think Moss is a late round sleeper because of it. Sadly, I will not be drafting Singletary this year though. The next guy I want to talk about is someone that has raised fantasy eyebrows for the last 2 years as a potential boom candidate. Kerryon Johnson has it all, or had it all. He was an all-state basketball player in high school, and it shows in his footwork. He was a stud at Auburn, leading the SEC in rushing in 2017. He was a sneaky draft pick as the 6th running back off the board behind bigger names like Saquon and Chubb. He really showed flashes of greatness in his rookie season. I feel like it's overlooked too that he helped transform what was arguably the worst rushing unit the year prior in the Lions. He led the team with 641 yards rushing just on 118 carries, despite missing the last 4 games. And in September that year, he became the first Lion to rush for 100 yards in a game since Reggie Bush did it in 2013. Really sorry. The city of Detroit just takes unified L's. He was also just a walking highlight reel, so Detroiters had high hopes for some saving power. All that to say, Kerryon gained some fantasy relevance as experts and lay fantasy players alike generally drafted him above guys like Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and Aaron Jones in 2019. All guys that went off. Then he showed for 8 games and put up worse numbers than the year prior. I think people still had high hopes for Kerryon going into 2020. That is until the Lions took Swift in the 2nd round of the draft. DeAndre Swift is just so similar, and although comparably injury prone, he's coming in fresh. So I think Swift is a guy that takes over the starting role as a result and has a solid rookie season. Look to pick up Swift in mid-rounds as having RB2 upside, but I'll be avoiding Kerryon this year. This next guy was already up in the air in my mind. Darrell Henderson had basically 2 outlooks for 2020. We're not going off of a lot, but because of Gurley's signing to Atlanta, Henderson would either lead in a timeshare or concede in a timeshare. I really didn't see an alternative to that. You already had Malcolm Brown in the mix, and with the Rams taking Cam Akers in the 2nd round, I think it's the latter. Yeah, Henderson was drafted in the 3rd round in 2019. He was a high performer at Memphis and even had a high combine grade. I just think it would be hard to argue Henderson as the better back here. And even if you do, the Rams GM Les Snead says he looks to have multiple workhorse backs. So we're either getting limited shared snaps or we're getting inconsistency week to week. That's in a Rams offense that really struggled to run the ball last year with Gurley. They have had a bad O-line and honestly, at times last season, some questionable play calling. It sounds like blasphemy for a guy like me to call out McVay on that, but they started games trying to run the ball wide against a six-man front and almost always to no avail. And when they ran the ball up the middle, the O-line just didn't win battles. I think McVay will continue with his aggressive play calling. The Rams will have a better year, but likely with different backs, game to game or snap to snap. I just don't see any back thriving in this attack, and if there is one, it will be Cam. For that reason, I'm steering clear of Henderson this year. This last guy on my list is a guy that kind of flies under the fantasy radar, despite his big mouth in press conferences. Big Truss, aka Mark Ingram, has had years of fantasy relevance, really since 2014. At the age of 30, the dude still cooks. Alongside Lamar and Gus Edwards, Ingram helped with the single greatest rushing season by a team in NFL history. He finished with over 1,000 yards and had 10 TDs last season, making him RB11. I think this rushing offense repeats as number one, albeit with a slight decrease. Teams will have a better plan of attack against Lamar and as a result against the whole run game. Ingram's ADP is at 41 and 20 among RBs, so there's already projected regression, but I think the light dimmed even further for Ingram when the Ravens took Dobbins with the 55th pick. J.K. Dobbins is a dark horse in this draft. The pick shows, according to Ingram himself, that the Ravens are pushing for a Super Bowl this season. They want to win now. That tells me the Ravens are looking to use Dobbins in some significant way, be it in pass catching, third downs, what have you. I actually think Ingram will be the heavy hitter at his frame, making him more of a third down and goal line back. And you just can't live off of touchdown dependency in fantasy. So while I think Ingram has another 10 TD season, he is not reaching 1,000 yards, and he's not going to be very involved in the passing game. With that, I'm not going to be drafting him in 2020.
Hey guys, Alex here, editor-at-large at Fantasizing, where we talk all things fantasy football. Yes, I'm still holding Yoo-Hoo against his will. So do me a favor, leave us a like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, and comment. We want to hear from you guys, be it about brew or about football. Hopefully both.